My name is Wendy Finch, and I'm the Marketing Director for TopCon Solutions Store. And before we get started with today's presentation, I'd like to take just a minute or two to share with you who we are here at TopCon Solutions Store. So we are 14 locations across the U.S. and Canada, and while our TopCon-owned network is relatively new to the industry, our individual stores and the people are not. The TSS network is made up of long-standing, successful, and independently owned TopCon dealers who over the past several years have come together through acquisition to form a coast-to-coast solutions-focused network. With the addition of each independent dealer came an incredible amount of experience, industry knowledge, and talent that would be impossible for any singular dealer to maintain. So let me ask you, if you had one industry leader to provide product knowledge, expertise for the following brands, and the brands should be up on the screen here. So we represent TopCon, Sokia, Autodesk, Bluebeam, and a number of other product brands. That's what is known as a one-stop shop, right? And Kevin, we went back to the title slide.
Oh, that's okay.
So there we go. But what if that industry leader took it to the next level? Just imagine, not only do they provide you the technology tools to stay ahead of your competitors, but this same provider is your technical support arm for all products. They are your training and consulting resource to ensure your teams are utilizing your technology products in the most productive way. And not just teaching the manufacturer product guide. It doesn't have to be a singular product learning format, but rather learning how all your products can work together through brand partnerships and added connectivity. You see, this local resource has taken the time to learn your business. This industry leader, all right, I lost my place there. So this industry leader is collaborating internally to bring you the workflows to streamline your product from the field to the office. This solutions provider is over 150 people strong. We are TopCon Solutions Store, and our number one objective is to make you successful. Whatever your definition of success is, it can be winning more business, improving productivity, or investing in your team's development to ensure you retain the best and brightest in our very competitive industry. You tell us what you need, you set the bar, and we'll exceed it. So now, hopefully you have a little bit better understanding of the TopCon Solutions story. So let's get started with today's presentation. So coming to you from the Pacific Northwest and a member of the newest addition to the Solutions Network, PPI Group, I would like to welcome Kevin Closson. So, welcome, Kevin.
Oh, well, thank you, Wendy. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Thanks for giving us a chance.
Yeah, I know that you're. I know you well because we work in the same office, and that you lead our software civil engineering technical team. But maybe you could offer a brief summary of your experiences that has led you to this role.
Oh, sure. I appreciate that, Wendy. As Wendy said, I'm Kevin Closson, and I tell you, this still blows my mind to this day. I'm working on my 18th year here at the PPI Group. Time flies, I guess, when you're having fun. And I wear a lot of hats here at PPI. I do, throughout the years, I do a lot of the tech support. Now I kind of focus a little bit more on some of the higher end cases, something's coming through, maybe we have to work on it for a while, whatever it may be, and I work directly with Autodesk on that. But one of my main goals right now is doing more of the consulting and getting people up to speed with their templates, setting standards, looking at their current workflows and figuring out a way to make them more efficient. So what we're going to be looking at today, and it's kind of I was looking forward to doing this. This is kind of coming from that standpoint, or this brief seminar here, or whatever, is kind of coming from that standpoint of folks getting up to speed with Civil 3D, as I said a moment ago, that's what I do a lot of. I'm going into firms, believe it or not, they're still using Land Desktop. That's still one of the #1 competitors with Civil 3D, believe it or not. And I'll go in there, I'll take a look at their systems, we'll look at, across the board, basically, the process, the bottlenecks, if you will, the frustrations that they have. And that's sort of how I laid this out. A little bit lighthearted here, but my first goal is to hopefully make life a little bit better for you, if you are one of those folks that are just jumping in. I work with so many folks around here up in the Pacific Northwest. Many of you have probably heard me show a couple of little bells and whistles here and there to to make the program a bit more intuitive, less frustrating, less searching for things when you just need a simple command. So that, again, we'll start off kind of lightweight and easy there. I'll show you how we can do immediate customization, where you could get off this webcast now and go right to your system and load a few things here and there, and like I say, you'll be pleased. And then I thought where I'd start is I put a drawing together. I'm sorry, I'm chuckling here. I called it bottleneck park here, and I just kind of laid it out as what I usually see when folks are in fact using Civil 3D, where the perhaps they've just jumped off from the Autodesk template, which in all fairness, it is a complete template. However, there's a few things here and there that don't really allow fluid workflows. And it depends. I mean, in fairness, there is no real wrong answers. It's whatever works for you. But, again, what I want to show today is just little techniques that I wish I could say that I came up with them all, but a lot of times it's just, going in, working with people, beating my head against the program to figure out what's going to be the best system for them. And again, that would be kind of a nice little point of reference. I'll show you. And in fact, it's always kind of funny. I love to ask the question when I'm actually with folks and say, if you ran into this, you ran into that. And it is, and I know the answer to the question. So we'll take a peek at that. Then I want to move in from looking at that, knowing, sort of as our base point, we'll jump over into data management, working with points. And believe it or not, I mean, everywhere I go, and I'm talking to solid advanced users too, that when we're in there, they're the biggest frustration, everybody knows it. I just want my point to show. I just want to turn the label off. You go to freeze a label or whatever, and the entire point turns off, or you try to move something to another location or another layer, and it doesn't inherit the properties. And all of that has to do with styles and in truth, settings. So that's some of the little core pieces that I wanted to maybe attack and maybe shed some light on. And in fact, I called it behind the scenes settings. And with that, when you do have that that concept down, what makes it really nice is you can actually transfer that to the other entities within Civil 3D, whether it be alignments, profiles, if you're on the civil side, it really is. And maybe I'll throw this one out first. I prefer to run the program at more of an object level versus a layer level. And again, we'll explore that here as we go. And in all of that, I should underline this: what controls what. That is the key. And the more flight time you do get with the program, it does get easier. You'll run into the same mistakes or problems that you've had in the past. And you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot to toggle this button on over here. And then as we go, hopefully I'll show a couple of you some new features here and there. I kind of hand selected a few that are somewhat embedded. When you drill down, for instance, in surface properties, there's a couple of nice little features in there that I thought I'd show off. Now, before I get too far along, I really can't underline this enough. Big bold letters there. The Civil 3D needs to work with the template. You have to have a solid template to work with Civil 3D. Well, maybe I'll hedge that a little bit. It doesn't have to be solid, but if it is solid, everything that you create, you're going to know what you're going to get. As we create a surface, I'm going to immediately see that information come in as expected, versus creating a surface and you only get a border or something like that. And you know, again, I can't underline this enough. With some simple settings inside of our styles template, save it back, and every time we do a drawing, starting up from that template, you know, again, we know what to expect, and there's slick little workflows that we can, you know, put into place. And maybe I'll also throw this out there. In fact, it's on the last slide. When I build templates for folks, I always try to pass on that that I think of it holistically as I build it. You know, it's one thing to create, you know, I'm talking surfaces or points or whatever it may be. It's one thing to build it and get it to come in accurately, and you look at it and it's, you know, it's easy enough to get that information in. But it's when that existing ground surface in one sheet needs to be predominant. Perhaps it's your base plan or something like that, and so you're really calling out those contours. But in that next sheet or next viewport, whatever it may be, it needs to be grayscaled because perhaps you're doing a boundary survey or something like that, and you want that line work to pop. So I've seen this again and again where folks will go in and they'll believe it or not, and I'm sure I've done it myself, and I'm sure some of you have as well, that they'll actually copy that surface and then apply a different style to it. And that's what it's boiling down to is there's just too much locked down within the styles. So I like to try to give the control to what I refer to as insertion layers, and I'll show that through points. And like I say, that should transfer nicely to some of the other pieces there. So let's go ahead and take a look. I put a couple of data sets together to demonstrate some of this stuff. And as Wendy said there, feel free, you can, all of this is going to be recorded. So if questions are coming in, I'll have my team, myself included, we'll be getting back to you individually. We just don't have a lot of time, unfortunately, to, in fact, I'd love to hang out with you all day, to be honest with you. All right, so let's see what we got. Hopefully everybody can see that okay. So here's just a little drawing. I believe this actually originated in, I believe this one originated from Autodesk or Ascent or something like that. But I manipulated it a little bit here and there, just playing with some of the different entities to hopefully show some stuff off with it. And maybe first, and here's where I was talking about some of the interface stuff. I'm going to minimize one piece on here. I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to add in what we call our workspace. So we all use this tool up here at the top, not just plot, but the whole little bar there. And that is what we refer to as the quick reference toolbar. And kind of starting off with this thing, you know, again, we all use it. We save, we plot, we do an undo from there, and, you know, open drawing, start new drawing. So, you know, it is utilized. However, if you're newer to the program, and I'm going off experience with working with folks, the frustration levels where they're just trying to find a simple button, or they're just trying to get some quick commands, you know, whatever it may be. And one in particular, we'll talk about a few of them here. One in particular would be if I were to go down any one of these, are actually a Civil 3D point object there, and often we'll select something. And we just want to, like with our properties, or for that matter, looking over here in our drop down, our layers. But if I select a Civil 3D entity, notice how the ribbon changes, and that's because it's content sensitive. So if I was just trying to get a quick, you know, what layer is this point on, I'd have to switch back over to my home tab and, you know, take a quick look at it and go, okay, that came in on a tree layer for the point. So not the end of the world, but when you have to do that again and again and again, it does get a little frustrating. And you can run the properties dialog box. There's nothing wrong with that. I have found, though, in doing that, depending on how big the drawing gets, that properties dialog keeps track of everything, and it can actually slow down your system while you're working there. So one of the little tricks with this quick access toolbar is it's incredibly easy to customize, and that's what I wanted to get across to everybody. However, there's only so much real estate on it. You can create multiple buttons with, you know, when you select one and it drops down and it gives you, you know, several different features on it. But I'll show you you could walk to your desk right now and do this. There's no tricks up my sleeve here with this. So, and it's almost bulletproof. If I right click, this is the workspace, and if I drop that down, and everybody knows this, there's the Civil 3D workspace, AutoCAD, drafting annotation, and probably the one we'd use second most would be that planning and analysis, which is the Map 3D. However, these same options are down in our bottom right corner here. It looks like a little gear or a sprocket. So I really don't need that on my toolbar. If I needed to switch over to map, I just drop that up, if you will, and I could switch it right over to planning and analysis. So what I'm going to do is I can simply right click on it and just remove that from the quick access toolbar. Now, for many of you, you're probably doing this because I know I've showed hundreds of people this in different classes or consulting engagements, but this is how easy this is to customize. All I'd have to do is, and what I want is I want to add that layer drop down to that toolbar. And it's nothing more than a simple right click, and you'll see that that first option there is added to the quick access toolbar. And that will hold. And if I needed to work on it all day long, whatever, it'll stay there. But let me give you one more little piece to it, though. I said all day long. It will disappear if we don't have our workspace settings set correctly. And there's not much to it. Back down to that little, and everybody does this once usually, back down to that little gear for just a second. And if I drop that up again, and I were to say workspace settings, all you have to do is just make sure the bottom toggle is on where it automatically saves if in fact you changed workspaces. By default, it's always set to do not save. So anything that I do to my interface with that set there, and again, it's a one-time setting, it will hold, and you're up and running. So now, if I were to pick one of those points, there's an immediate drop down, and I could even, just like if I was utilizing it any other time, I could go pick a different layer. I can even go into the colors now if I needed to change that tree. Notice you can actually pick within that drop down, and I'm swapping a color. So I don't actually have to go all the way back into the layer properties dialog box. So very nice. Now, a couple other things, and I swear this is part of what created this webcast here, is the question I get all the time is somebody says, I just want the darn thing to give me a bearing and a distance. Where is it at? And what it is it's a little bit buried. I wouldn't say buried. It's just in the ribbon. And when you become more familiar with the ribbon, you would know that looking across here, it would be an analyze tool. And if I slide on over here, it happens to be this one right here. Okay, the line art information. Somebody just wants to get a quick bearing and distance. They don't want to, have to doing all kinds of lists and everything else. And again, I would just simply right click on it, add it to my quick access toolbar, and it shoots it right up there. And it's a nice little tool. It'll display on our command line here. If you were to select it and you were to just pick, I don't know, I'll just find something here. I threw a bearing up here. If I select that, you can see that matches up, and there's your course and your distance, and good news is that does match. Is worth noting, and this is what I'm talking about with the Civil 3D template that comes with it, or the default template. Notice that the seconds are 2 places past the decimal, and you may not want to distance out to the thousandth. So these all would have to be manipulated within the styles, and then again, you want to get that backed into your template, your startup template from the beginning. All right, so that's just one of the things. Maybe a couple of quick, just little pieces here and there. This little inquiry tool, especially when I get a chance to talk with surveyors, this seems to be a popular one. If you select it, and at times this can be more robust than maybe that you want, but it works with all kinds of different entities within the program. And I just want to show off, like, here's a point. If I drop that down, and you'll see that there's a point inverse. And I've used this working with folks where we're just trying to figure out, like, what is the best basis of bearing. We're comparing monumentation, whatever it may be. And it's this easy. You just say point number. If I knew the number, I could punch it in, or I could pick the little ellipsis, I believe they call that. And it's asking me which one you want to start with. And I just do a couple of little monuments in here. I could select this one if I wanted to. And you can see that it fills in that first part of the information. And then down here on that second number, I can go pick the other one. And then we can look down toward the bottom. It does give us our bearing and our distance. We have all the coordinate values, that kind of thing. Now, one thing that is slick with this, and this is where a lot of folks don't know about this, I see it used a lot, but I actually, if you have this button on right here, I can project that into my, what they call it's a command, it's the command line, but they have another term for it, Autodesk window or something like that. And all that same information shows right here. And then that button just to the left of it would actually allow me to kick it out to like an Excel spreadsheet, whatever it may be. Now, kind of playing with that for just a second, same idea here, I'll just condense that down a little bit. With, if I was trying to compare some monumentation, whatever it may be, like I say, point number 2, I could pick that one again and just go pick a different one. And you'll see that it draws a temporary line between those two, and you're up and running. So very nice. All right, so again, this is showing a little bit of just little functions that hopefully will make your life a little bit easier. Maybe lastly with that toolbar is, especially for the folks who are getting up to speed, this is the old school file edit view, all of that. That's what we've used in Land Desktop and AutoCAD, whatever it may be. These can be accessed by just dropping this down. Mine already is up, but you'll notice that it says hide menu bar. So yours would say, if you don't have it on, it would say show menu bar. And I think it just gives a nice working relationship with the program. Again, if you're trying to remember how to import points, you don't have to go to insert, find it. You can just go up to the top there, say points, and then lo and behold, there's import export points. So nice and simple. Now, again, I want to talk a little bit about, bottlenecks that I've seen or ran into. So I mocked up a few things within this drawing. Back here, let me browse out just a bit, hopefully. And please let me know if this ends up going a little too fast. I know that this is being, kicked out there. So sometimes the refresh rate, and I know I'm talking fast and trying to get a lot in. So one of the big things, and this is where I want to cross over a little bit, where I was talking about coming from that holistic approach with the program. Again, all of these points look great, and I do want to state one more time that there is no wrong answers. It's kind of like, what was that guy's name? Bob Ross. It's your happy little clouds, your happy little world there. Yeah, you can do anything you want. I realize some folks prefer workflows over others, so I'm not here to reinvent the wheel. I just want to show a few things that have worked out quite nicely. So this is a proposed road, I guess, going through here, and you can see that there's trees on both the east and west side of it. And perhaps up here, maybe these trees need to be removed, and maybe you want to highlight those trees. Either make them bold or, for that matter, grayscale them to show on that map that, okay, in this area to complete this design, these are the ones that are going to have to be taken out, whatever, however you want to annotate that. So it's very common that folks will grab one of these, one of those points like we've always done. And now that I have this slick drop down up here, I could drop it down, and I did, hopefully I threw that layer in there. Yeah, I just put one in here called tree removal, and I want to take that point and drop it onto that layer. And we're expecting to see, as AutoCAD in the past, as soon as I hit escape, right now it's still bold, but as soon as I hit escape, notice that it's still green. And this doesn't just happen with points, it happens with contour lines, whatever it is. And it's because we have to know what's controlling what. That's that style concept, okay? Now, if I were to pick it again, you'll notice that it actually is, which one? Yep, that's right one. When I pick it, it does say that it's on that tree removal layer. However, it's still retaining the properties from the style that created it. So that's one of the things that I wanted to show as we move along here. Okay, all right, and so keep that in mind. Also, anything else? I think I'll come back to this because I want to sort of jump back and forth within these drawings. So I'm going to jump to a drawing that talks about how to control these things. And maybe one last thing with this is many of you probably have ran into this where you're trying to draw lines. Now, these are trees, but if I were to go to the monuments or something like that, and you type in, polyline or 3D polyline, whatever your poison is, and you start snapping to those nodes, especially if it's a 3D polyline, you'll notice that the line, it looks great in plan view, but you're getting a slope distance versus a horizontal distance. That's another one of these techniques that I wanted to maybe point out. in Land Desktop, we had a version of this. I recommend having all of your point styles set so the entity comes in at a 0 coplanar elevation. So when I make measurements between monuments and or, you know, whatever it is, you're not getting that slope distance. The software is smart enough to know that that if I build a surface from those points, that it'll automatically pull the correct elevation from the actual database. All right, so, and I'll show you where those settings are. They're all just simply within the point style. And if you ever did need those blocks at elevation or points at elevation, it's literally a click away. And then maybe one more thing here before I jump out of this one, and I already mentioned this earlier. This is one of the big ones, is especially, you know, for years, this has been the one that's frustrated many a surveyor, is I'm getting ready to finish this drawing, and all I want to do is simply, you know, grab one of these, you know, like we did back in the Land Desktop days. We would freeze the point attributed information, and in fact, I'll give it a go, and everybody knows across the country here what exactly was going to happen. If I pick the old freeze and I select that, the whole thing turned off. Not only did that turn off, all of the other trees within that layer turned off. Okay, so what I've seen, good or bad, is, and like I say, there's no real wrong answers here. If I want to, and in fact, I just worked with some folks this week and that worked it like this, is instead of, you know, going through this little workflow I'm going to show you, what they did is they would actually go to the point group itself, and they would create a point group of trees. In fact, I've already thrown one in here, and I'm just going to update these. So looking down here, here's that tree. And if I right click on the properties of that, what they'll do is they'll select this, and they'll grab all of these all of these tree points, throw it on this, and then they'll come down below and say, okay, here's a point style. That's the tree itself, or actually that's the default style. The description key file is dictating what that symbol is. And then down below here, this is where they'll just drop this down, and I can hear a few of you going, yep, that's what I do. They'll drop this down, they'll set it to none, and then nothing's happened yet. We just have to make sure that we have that overwritten. That overrides the description key file. I am going to talk about that in just a moment. And when I say okay to that, it behaves great, and you know, a lot of people like that. However, I would have to do that, and I'm working on a description key file for some folks that has over 300 keys in it. I sure as heck don't want to have to manage that many point groups just to do that, right? Way too much work. So let me jump over to this other drawing. I call this one Easy Street, and it'll pop up here in just a second. All right, so I want to show a little different way of working with these points, a more fluid way as far as I'm concerned. And this isn't just my opinion. This is what I've worked with many a folk, and they really kind of like how it plays out. So first things first, I'm just going to bring in a point file that I actually received from a local friend up here. And I'm not going to use the survey database this go. I have a feeling we're probably going to do a series of these webcasts. So, you know, let us know, and I can start putting other topics together. But for starters here, I'm going to simply do a quick insert, points from a file. Again, this will keep the points in the drawing. We can lock them down, so we have some form of protection in there, but they're not truly in a database. And I'll just bring it in. I'm going to grab this one that's called As-Built Field Data, and I have a description key file that's already set up for this. So when I open that and make sure I have the correct format, PNAZD, comma delimited, and I'll just dump this in, and it's going to look like quite a mess. And I hope my partner up north sees this. You're famous. All right. So several points came in. You can see, and this is actually an as-built. You can see that there, roughly, you can see that there's a cul-de-sac that's floating around inside of that. Okay. Now, several trees, all kinds of different site markings have been located, and the description key file has picked all of those up. And everyone here knows, when it comes to a description key file, you're on the settings tab. We've been doing this for years. Just simply settings tab, just to point it out here. I call this one solution, and I'll just edit the keys so you can get a real quick look at this. And this is definitely a sizable point file, no doubt about it. Move that out of the way. And the description key file is the king of all hierarchy. We can move points around one over the other, that kind of thing. And in fact, let me start with that one there first. Earlier I mentioned I try to tell everybody to, well, I don't know, I tell them, but I suggest that start working with your data, Civil 3D data, more object-based versus layer-based. For years and years, we went and found every one of these layers, and we froze them and turned them off within, Land Desktop and in the other programs as well. But these are intelligent objects that we can stylize and apply a style that doesn't have anything turned on. And the good news is that the first one that I'm going to show is I see this one all the time. So under point groups here, this is this hierarchy concept. And if we look, here's our point groups. And I have a couple that I've already built in addition to the all points point group. I'm going to update these first. Now, looking down this list, everyone's seen a no-show or off or something like that. So this one's pretty much, everyone's getting the feel for this. And all this does is when you set the hierarchy, you simply right-click on the very top header there, and you would take your, whatever you call it, no display or off or what have you, and shoot it to the top. And what it is that all points and no show, point for point, those two are identical. The only difference is the output properties with this one is going to turn everything off, where this one is saying, either show what we have here or let the description key file dictate how that information comes in. And I'm sure I'm not showing anything too new for everybody here. Oops, I think I missed one little setting. Nope, those are overwritten, probably just a regen. Yep, so that just is a quick global, everything's off. I didn't go fight with layers. In fact, if I went up to my layers, you'd see that everything's still turned on. If I need to see those again, or I want, certain, whatever it is, create a new point group, I could put that new point group, set property, display properties within it and shoot that to the top, and anything underneath that no display would be turned off. So very nice. Now I'm going to go back up to this, and I'll just take that all points up real quick, shoot it back up here. And where I'm going with this, before I actually build a surface with it, where I'm going with this is earlier I was talking about taking these points and turning off just the labels, okay? Now, everything comes down to your template and or settings to make this information work. And you have to have the consistency within the office as well. I run into that a lot too, where you have multiple teams gathering data and they may do it differently or they've done it the same way for years. And ideally you have that consistency and things will flow. Again, I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. So what I'm going to do here is I would create, and by the way, you saw how these point groups work in hierarchy over one another. But the king of all hierarchy when it comes to points is that description key file. The point comes in, it sees the description, it goes out and grabs the appropriate symbol, and it puts it on the layer. That holds, okay? And if I want to change it, I have to override it. So what I've done here on this, and we've already seen it, the no-show is a global point group. It says grab every point that ever comes in the drawing and turn it off when I shoot it up to the top. But here's this little, taking that same concept, here's a neat little trick that worked out quite well. I have one in here called symbols only. And all of nothing more than just, file new, whatever. And I'll right click on this and just go into it, again, you would name it. And as it comes down below here, again, the point style doesn't matter. In this case, although it says basic X, standard, whatever your default is, remember that description key file is going to dictate that's the boss. However, down below here, I'm going to say, okay, well, let's say the point label style, let's turn that off. But I want to override it. And now, if I just okayed this, I wouldn't have had any points in this point group. Everybody knows that. We got to make sure we include the appropriate data. So if I jump over to my include tab, we could go down below here and click, and and be punching in these numbers, but I'm sure that I would fat finger something at some point. So not necessarily the best way to do it. A tab that most folks just haven't clicked on before, just to the left of it, it says raw descriptions matching. This is populated from your description key file. So when you build your description key file, every one of those will show up in this list. So that'll make it much easier. And what you do is, when I create these for folks, I'll sit down with them and we just go down the list, and these aren't my styles, so I don't know every single one of them, but many of them jump out at me, obviously a benchmark. But what you would do is you would just go down this list and say, you know, benchmark, yeah, any kind of monumentation, obviously we'd want that every single time when a point comes in, or for a final plot. And just keep working your way down this. And you can see I just sort of mocked this one up and grabbed quite a few of them, but there's a lot more. If you have, say, some kind of, you know, aluminum cap that you went out and picked up in the field, and you would definitely want that turned on in here, so you would get that symbol. But if you didn't pick it up, even though it's on, obviously it's not going to create something. It's just it just when you pick it up, it'll be here waiting to give you those output properties that we're looking for. Okay, so you would go take your time, go through this thing. This will get you 95+% there, and then once you're at that point, you're golden, and you can always add or subtract from any point group for that final plot, drawing to drawing. So once those are in, okay, the last little trick on this is, remember, I have to override that description key file. And if I look down here, there's that point label style. It's set to none and it's toggled on. Okay, great. So if I OK this, now nothing happens yet because I had it already pre-built into my template and it's still at the bottom. So what I could do then is, through some simple manipulation, again through hierarchy, I would leave my no-show in the middle here. I'm actually going to take that all points down to the bottom, and if I OK it now, the no-show would turn everything off. What I want to do actually is take that symbols only directly above it, and you'll have to play with this a bit here and there. It's not hard. I just mean it in the aspect that massaging it to make sure you have everything within your drawing. And if I say OK on that, and what did I miss? Let's see. There we go. I just needed a quick regen. And you can see all of that symbology that came in, everything that was picked up in the field. Okay. Now, too good to be true. Well, let me show another little quick deal with it, just to kind of give you that quick workflow. If I were to take that all points back up to the top, and I always just like to just do it one more time, just to sort of make sure everybody has the concept down and see that there really is no trick to this. It's all about settings. All of those points are there. And what I'm going to do, and that's kind of why I brought them into the points per file concept here, I'm just going to erase them. And it takes a second here. There's a lot of them. There they go. They're gone. Now, if this was a completely new drawing, different day, different project, whole 9 yards, my template has everything stored in here ready to go. So we would send our team out, they gather their data, they bring it back in, process it, whatever has to be done to it, who knows, transformations, what have you. And then it's the same concept. I just would take my insert tab, points from file, grab that same point file that I was just playing with, shoot that in here, look down my list, make sure I have the appropriate format, OK this. And it's quick zoom extents. And then the only other thing that I would have to do is update all of my point groups. There is some third-party tools. We actually have one called PPI Civil 3 briefcase that can actually be a running tally, so I don't always have to keep going through everything and updating it. Side note though, looking down here though, there's our all points. All I would have to do then, again, brand new draw, is just say properties. Again, take that symbols only to the top. No show directly underneath it, and when we OK that, and boom, ready to go. Now that may be too early to be actually plotting this, but it does show you where I'm going with it. Can that be manipulated? Yeah, I already said it could be. Nothing to it, just go to the properties of it. I need to get rid of, exclude these points to the west or whatever, who knows. All right, so I want to move forward with these points, and I want to create a surface and show a couple of newer tools inside of surface creation and surface analysis. So I'm actually going to go right back into my properties, and I want to see all these points first. And there's different ways to do this. I've seen some firms already have all of their points in place and have points that they don't usually have in a surface, maybe a root ball in a tree or a top of a gate or something like that. They already have those excluded. So as the points come in, they update them and it's ready to go. I'm going to cheat a little bit for speed because I'm up against time here. So I'm going to just say point groups, new, and you've all done this a time or two, and we'll call this, I don't know, what do we want to call this? Let's call it a topo. Sounds good. I don't care about any of this information down here as far as the styles. The description key file is going to dictate that, and I'm going to do a include selection set in the drawing. I pick that big button, and there's actually some points down here that were for the control. Probably picking up the GPS. Anyway, I'm just going to grab these here, grab them all, and I'm not sifting through. There's actually some points in here that I probably shouldn't grab, and that's a snapshot in time, so it calls out those exact points. And if I build a surface from that point group now, nothing to it, we've all done this, right click or go up to the top, and we'll name this, let's call it a as-built or EG or whatever you want to call it. And I'll leave the my editing style that I have in place for now, and I'll expand out that surface. And I need to define it, and I'm going to define that with a point group, and I'll use that topo point group. There it goes. All right, so two things I want to show with this is I want to show, when we're talking about surface analysis, I'm seeing, especially now more than ever, especially with the TopCon gear, where they're gathering data out in the field, and it's awesome. You can draw your lines right there. You know, what you see is what you get. You know, but every now and then, you know, I'm just as guilty as anybody else. You know, trying to get off the job site, whatever it is, and might have something crossed up, and we actually have tools in place that will say, let's go to, you know, if in fact you have a crossing break line, and let's take a look at it and analyze it and figure out what to do. So that's where I wanted to go with this. Now, at this stage of the game, if I took just this surface here and dumped it into a view, you can see that without using break lines and rules, this thing's looking pretty darn rough right now. Okay, so here's where we need to go in and you know, add in the appropriate break lines, faults, you know, whatever it is, rules, if you will. Now, to do that, through the magic of television here, what I did is I just created a layer. I've already brought in this line work. I think I did anyway. Where did I put it? Whoops. I'm working on my other screen here. And I think that jumped. There it is. I'll turn this on. And you can see they actually did a lot of work on this thing. I'll just send that to back just to make it a little bit easier to see. And I love the annotative scale, all of your styles being set up correctly. I can drop this down, all my points will shrink down. And we're not hurting the drawing, they're built to do that. And you can see there's points all over. We have all of these different break lines in here. So I'm just gonna, for speed again, I'm gonna add those break lines in. Add. And I'll just call them field GRP for group, something like that. Standard means they're at elevation, and I'll okay this. And the beauty of it is it will sift through all this for us, even though there's 10 lines and everything else. I just have to, points and all, I just have to grab them, and you'll see on the command line there, it should say something to the effect of, oh, I know what I did. I didn't blow it up. I brought it in as a block, sorry. Let me explode that real quick. If I can get to it. And there we are. Okay, we'll do that one more time. Break lines, add, like I said, I'll just say speed here, group. Standard means they're at elevation. I'm using a mid-ordinate of 1 that just measures that between the chord and the arc, and it smooths out our curves, and I'm actually using 100. This isn't a very big surface. I'll say okay, grab them all, enter. And what I got on this other screen first, let me take a quick peek at this. If I rotate this back, you'll see their efforts, and I was really impressed with this. I hope he is watching right now, because I loved this drawing. You can see that they've got even ADA ramps in there, so all kinds of stuff that that roundabout's much more defined. I mean, you can see the crown of the road, everything else. So well played. Now, what I have over here is this big, intimidating list. And because there's so many points and so many lines, these aren't really all that bad. What they're saying is there's multiple elevations at the exact same, it's the exact same elevation at the same place. So those lines were generated from the point. So the point and the end point of line, there's two of them, so they're duplicates, and it just gets rid of them for us. However, this is a problem where it says error. And the nice thing about Civil 3D is, I had to make my screen bigger, so my dialog box is a little bit haywire. If I go click on one of these errors, if I can get over to it. There it goes. And at the end of this darn thing, I can find it, okay? It should, it will. Sorry, my dialog box, when I switch screens and go onto this, it's big. But at the end of it, basically, it's going to give me a little text that says zoom to it, okay? I probably could even right click on it. I haven't thought of that before. No, maybe not. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to move this off my screen for a second. And what's happening is there's a couple of different areas where we have crossing break lines, and it would zoom into it, and it would show us that. Now I'm going to do this real quick and mute that surface briefly. I'll just give it something like border only for now, just so you can see the line work a bit better. And I'll show a different way to get to it. But here's the, and I got to kind of quickly whip through this. But if I jump over to this other drawing, I put something together that little mock. It's very abstract, to say the least. But this will show what I'm talking about. What I have here is not yet. I'm going to turn it into a surface. This is a feature line, and I purposely, like I said, this is abstract, just so you can understand exactly what's going on here. I created this rectangle at 0 elevation, and it's a feature line or a 3D polyline, however you want to do it. And again, 0. I made this line, if I grab this one here and took that into the viewer, you'll see that it is exactly 10 feet, keeping my math very, very simple. So again, you can see exactly how this plays out. So that's 10 feet. Now I wanted to create this one as a feature line, and I'm going to again give that one, I'll make that half as tall, I'll say 5 feet. And you'll see how this all plays together. So if this could be a 3D polyline, whatever. But if I go down to my create feature lines from objects, and I grab this could be a survey figure as well. I select that, and what I'm going to do is leave this on, or I'm going to switch it over to what's called the none site, just a different site here. I may want to name this. I'll call this trim. I'll show you where this is going here in just a second. And then down below, do I want to stylize these? Sure, I like to have it. And then assign elevations, yes, please. And as this pops up, I'm going to give this one an elevation of 5 feet. So it's just coplanar at 5 feet. Ribbon changes if I select it, and we can just double check it and make sure it is, and it is 5 feet on both vertexes. So if I go in now and create a surface to this, and I'm sure you know where this is going, I'll make sure I just rebuild that one. And I'm going to create a new surface. Again, for speed here, I'm going to leave that out. I'm not worried about it right now. And I'll say OK. And I'll locate that newly created surface. And just like with anything else, I can right click, add break lines, add elevation. I'll just call this, what is this? I'll just say park lot, something like that. Standard, again, add elevation. There is no curve, so it doesn't matter what my min ordinate is. And I'll say OK, and I'll just zoom out here. Everything is created. Whoops. I think I missed it. Do that one more time. OK, I'll grab these. I'll say OK. And you can see now that we have a surface that popped in. And I'm actually going to change it so we can see some triangles in here at the same time, just so you get a little better feel for what's going on with this. What is that? Oh, it's Autodesk style here, so I'll say OK to that. And you can see how that triangulated, and if I grab this into a quick viewer, you'll see what the surface is doing. So it's not adhering to my line work that I was intending it to, these rules that I put in place. Okay, so here's this great analysis tool. If I select that surface and everything across the top, in fact, I'll leave it just like that, doesn't matter. So again, I'll select that surface. I was thinking about muting it a little bit, but right in the middle, there's this button called Resolve Breaklines, and they've added some new slick functionality in it. And if I pick that, on my ribbon over here, it says, okay, well, what are you trying to do? I'm comparing conflicts in breaklines. Is it from a survey database? Are they figures, or is it a pre-built surface? And this is a surface. If I select that, and oops, I missed it. I'll select it, and on my and I'm going to have to kind of bounce this around a little bit. Hopefully you can see all of this here. I'll just move it over this way a little bit. And you can see what it's showing me is breakline 1, breakline 2, and that there's a problem. So I'm going to move down here a little bit. And if I pick, in fact, I called this one swale. And if I pick that one, you'll see how that jumps. And it's showing, if I hit escape here, in blue and in red. Now you may have to do some reconnaissance on your drawing to make sure which is which, obviously. But again, that's why I created this abstract drawing. Looking at this, that was at 10 feet, this was at 0. So you have some options in here. I can say with that, I want to resolve this. Again, I can zoom to it. It's auto zoom right now. And you have 4 different options. With those, I could use average elevation, which is going to average the 2. I could use the higher one, the lower one, or specify my own. And in this case, I'm just going to average those just so we can immediately get this taken care of. And it is worth noting, the problem with crossing breaklines is often they will, down the line, create some form of corruption. And if I resolve that, move this out of the way for a second, and usually you do have to go back and force a rebuild on that surface. And you can see now that that did exactly that. I dumped that back. It took that. Now both lines, it put in like an elbow there. And then lastly on this, I just wanted to get this other one in here before I jumped over to that other drawing, and then I'll wrap up here. But if I were to take same idea, I'll select my surface. Well, actually, I don't even need to right now because I still have the dialog box up. I'll just select it. It's going to show me back here where that conflict is. And in this case, let's say I want to trim off the higher one. Like this was a mistake on my part. I picked up the wrong side of the curb or something like that. So what I could do then, slide over here, no big deal. I have a couple of different options. So as we were looking at, I'm going to say use the higher elevation. And when I hit resolve, should be showing me that there. Here, let me try this. I'm actually going to do that one more time because it didn't pick it up correctly. Again, I'll pick that surface, crossing break lines from the surface. There we are. There, no crossing. Oh, I must have resolved. Oh, I think I already trimmed it. Yeah, I did. I told it to automatically do it when I selected higher. It automatically did it. You actually can go physically pick it too. It'll ask you which side, and I think what I did is I just hit enter to get past it. You'll see it when you whip through it here. So anyway, I'll select this real quick, and I will just do a quick rebuild on it. And I may have grabbed the wrong one. I think I did, but it always happens. Something goes awry. But I would do a few undos and then just go back to that point. I must have picked the wrong thing, and maybe one of you saw it. And if you get back to me, I'll show you. But long story short, when I pick it, I was intending to trim the one that was above it at 5 feet. It gives me 2 different options, lower or higher. You select higher, and I think what I did is I hit enter when what I should have done is picked right next to it. It's kind of like trimming, basically. It's exactly like that. But just for sake of speed here, I want to jump over this one drawing and finish up. So again, if I were to run that, just so you can see how this thing plays out, if I ran that same concept, resolve break lines, and it is from the surface that I already selected, it pops up. There's a couple of them in here. Now these are considerably less, you know, they're not 10-foot busts by any means, but I'll just, you know, select one of them. You'll see that the line work comes in there. It's just telling you, you know, here's where these are crossing, which one do you want to get rid of, you know, do I want to average them, that kind of thing. Now, and same idea, you just say average, resolve. I'll pick the other one and just resolve them both. And if I were to rebuild that, there would be no error anymore. And moving forward, I have a solid drawing. So the last couple quick things I wanted to do, and I'll open it up for questions here, is just a couple of neat little features within the properties, surface properties. If I turn this thing on and I go ahead and give myself some triangles in here, you'll see that there's some kind of funky cross triangulation here and there. So I'll say contours and triangles. Move that out of the way. And we all know there's different techniques to clean this thing up. We can actually go physically pick these things, pick the surface, edit the surface, you know, whatever you want, however you want to attack it. I could put in a boundary, you know, many different little techniques. A few releases back, they've added a couple extra little buried pieces, if you will. But I can pick any surface that I've created and then go directly into the surface properties. And that pops up, and looking through my list here, under definitions, and it's the build drop down. Now I know I'm going fast here, but we'll have this recorded, and also feel free to get a hold of me, and I'll have my email up at the end there, and our team, and we'll get you all taken care of. But looking down this list, there's a couple of different or newer options, I would say. The one in particular that I'm looking for is this new one, or it's not brand new, but it's been out for a few releases. It's called Use Maximum Angle. And what that does, and you get some odd results sometimes, you know, you have to make sure you have good coverage of your surface that you're intending to use this on. But what it's doing before I apply it, and I should have zoomed, actually I'll take this big one here. I can set an obtuse angle, and it's only looking at that outer edge. So looking at this, I can tell that that's over 90 degrees. And if that's the case, I could set a value that says get rid of any external triangle if that internal angle there is greater than whatever value that I set it at. So I'll play with that. So going down this list here, exclude, or which one is it? Use maximum angle. I'll say yes. And right now it's 90. Sometimes you have to jump in and out to see if, you know, if it's really what you want. I'll say, I don't know, let's just go 110. And I'll hit apply. It'll force me to rebuild it, and I'll okay this thing. And you can see if I went 90, it would have gotten rid of these, but you can see how that's trimmed that all the way out around the outside of that thing. Nice and slick. All right, so on all of this, I want to be conscientious of your time, and I want to make sure I can answer some questions. A couple of things I would have liked to have shown, and I don't want to take too much of your time up here, but when we were talking about those points and point settings, let me just, for real quick, let me jump into that point, one of the point styles, just to show where I was talking about what controls what and what allows my point groups to manipulate or to be more fluid, and what allows me to take, going back to the first thing I showed you, where I can take a tree, move that tree onto a different layer, and that new layer will inherit, or the block will inherit the properties of that new layer. And it's very, very simple. It's nothing more than in any one of your point styles, and I'll just grab, you know, there's all kinds of them in here, but I'll just grab this, I don't know, what should we grab? Something that would be worth doing. This aluminum cap. That's a good one. I'm saying say anything, and then here I am being picky. Shrub, that'll work. If I right click on this and edit that, okay, that's not the one I wanted. The one I grabbed, sure. Yeah, that'll work. That's the one I want. Okay, bring this on the screen, and then I'll stop. Information, obviously, that's where we name it. As many of you know, this is where we bring in the block. Funny little thing, if you haven't done it before, you can insert it back in the drawing and it would show up in this list, but it would be great if there was a button up here, but if you ever right click, there's a browse right there, so you could browse out to a specific block that you were looking for. Now, here's where these two quick settings that I show everybody that really is the game changer for a lot of folks. The 3D Geometry tab, I tell you 9 times out of 10, and again, there's no wrong answers here, but 9 times out of 10, I'm in somebody's office and they have their point display mode set to at elevation or use elevation. And that makes sense. But again, if I'm drawing line work to those and I'm expecting horizontal lines, I'm going to get slope distances. So I always flatten all of them to 0. And the software is smart enough to know their true elevations. We just have to access commands, perhaps the transparent commands, whatever, to do that. And then here's that last little component. I always see, now this was a tree, I believe. Yeah. This one, notice how I don't have any layers set for either the marker or the label. And it's zeroed out. Remember, the description key file is dictating the layer. So I don't have to worry about that here. And when those points come in, this tree gets picked up by that description key. The description key says, put this point on tree layer, and also make sure you bring in that symbol. But there's only one place that controls that color of that tree, and it's that layer, because this is zeroed out. If this had, something like a tree layer and it was set to, who knows, red, something crazy there, a burning bush. If it was set to red, add a layer internally here, just like that tree from the first drawing that I was playing with. If I moved that red tree expecting it to switch to a green on a different layer, here is where this is going to still retain that data. And it's going to, now you have two different locations telling the same entity what to do. If you set these to 0, that layer takes care of it. And on top of that, you still have your point group object capabilities to turn everything off, and I never have to fight with those layers. And lastly, I promise I'll pipe down. I can go for days on this, everybody. Plan view, model, profile. It's a good idea. I actually, when I build these templates, I tell you, I've spent more time tedious clicking than I would ever like to admit. But you have to go through each one of these. And once you have one done and you're building it from scratch, it makes it a lot easier because you can just keep copying and moving on from there. So I'm going to stop there. I know, Wendy, you have plenty of things that we probably need to cover here. So I'm going to stop and jump out to our PowerPoint here.
Thank you so much for attending. We hope that you were able to have a couple of takeaways that can help in your daily work life here right away. Look for more information and more webinars in the future as we're just ramping up to this new business model. And let us know what we can help with, and maybe your idea will get put into a webinar series that can help others. So thank you so much for attending. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to your feedback. And we're going to go ahead and wrap things up, and you'll be getting that follow-up email with the recorded version, so you can go back and get some of those picks and clicks that we went through pretty quickly. Thank you, Kevin. I so appreciate you taking the time out to share this information, and hopefully some folks will take advantage of the other opportunities that we offer just to get increased productivity and make everybody a little bit more successful in their local region.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. It's all about that setup, and if we get those things in place, we can really make it sing. So,
okay.
Thank you, everybody, very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.